Three questions. One, what do the Bears have at quarterback right now? Two, how much draft capital do we expect them to spend on the quarterback position in this draft? And three, what traits are we looking for to fit in a Shane Waldron offense here? So starting that off, looking at, what do they have at quarterback right now? They got Justin Fields, obviously, and they have Tyson Bagent on the roster too, because we need to talk about, starter and backup here.
Mm-hmm.
They got two guys on the roster. What do you think about where the roster sits currently, what we can expect to see in the future here?
Yeah, I mean Justin Fields, is the Bears quarterback as we stand right now, and I think he's done enough that we've seen to be a starter in the NFL. Not getting into kind of like his trade value and stuff, I think he is a starter in the NFL. He's shown enough that, but the Bears are just in a unique standpoint, unique position where they have the number one overall pick. So it's a good position to be in because they have a lot of options, but it's also a tough position to be in because they have a quarterback who's a capable starter, even if he is maybe on the lower end right now. And they have a young backup too, in Tyson Bagent, who is an undrafted free agent who didn't look great when he played, but for an undrafted free agent to go and not look completely out of place, I think he's at least shown he can be a capable backup in the NFL. So, like I said, they're in it's just a weird situation that they're in, but they do, in my opinion, have an NFL starting quarterback on their roster, which not every team can say probably.
Yeah, it's a really situation most GMs would love to be in, right? Like you were not a number one pick worthy team, and you have the number one pick in a great quarterback draft here with this awesome prospect staring you in the face. And on the Justin Fields front, man, it's a tough conversation, right? Like it's because you're right. He is very talented and he's shown enough bright spots that you're like, okay, maybe there's something to work with there. But to me, there's also enough flags at times where I just get, as far as the passing goes, like he is such an explosive runner, such an electric runner. But some of the flags with him as a passer give me a lot of heartburn when I think about passing up on some of these other quarterbacks, because it's like the stuff with how little he's throwing over the middle of the field, some of his turn downs in the tape, like where he's watching the play work out exactly how it's supposed to and just not pulling the trigger. And maybe that's a trust thing, maybe that with his teammates, maybe that's something just a block in his brain of like, I need to see it first. I don't know exactly what it is, whether that's something that he came to the league with. I don't really think that's true, because I think we saw some of it as a rookie, him doing that stuff, and it has kind of gone away over the years. But it's something that I'm not sure once it starts how fixable it is. And if it's fixable, I wonder, is that something that takes 2-3 years to get back to where he was? And it almost feels like a sunk cost fallacy to me at some point of like, man, I want Justin Fields to be that guy, but I haven't seen enough evidence at this point that he will be. And it makes it really hard for me to say I want to stick with that guy as much as my heart wants to,
Yeah. I mean, I think of it the exact same way. He's shown so many flashes, and you're like, oh man, like if you could just, harness those flashes and become more consistent, like you really got a guy. And I think, if we were sitting here and the Bears had the 9th overall pick, then it's a completely different conversation. We're not even having a conversation about drafting a quarterback or trading up for a quarterback. We're saying, hey, if we get him a wide receiver and we get him a better line, like he can turn into something. But it's just the position that they're in. Because there are times, like you said, where the guy's open and he just hesitates just a little bit long. He's got a slower release than most quarterbacks, which, it isn't a huge deal breaker, but it is something that where if you're not pulling the trigger right away, it just exacerbates that problem. So yeah, it's again just the situation they're in, and I still believe that Justin Fields can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I just, at this point, this is my opinion, and the way I view how things are going, it's going to be a quarterback at 1. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And our friend Scott from Iowa chiming in the comments here, asking if Caleb Williams is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or is he going to be a potato, or more likely somewhere in the middle? He gave us the easy answer, somewhere in the middle, probably. I mean, we all hope
Yeah.
that he'd be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but we'll get to Caleb later.
Sure.
Next item on the agenda is how much draft capital can we expect the Bears to be spending at quarterback? And I mean, this one's an easy answer, don't you think, Steve?
Yeah, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. It's the first overall pick. I don't see them taking a quarterback like with another pick because they just don't have enough draft capital. They're not going to try and draft like a fourth or fifth round rookie to see maybe we'll find something. They just don't have enough assets. The likely draft a quarterback at 1 and then not use any other draft capital on the position.
Well, even let's talk a little bit about the prospect that I've seen floated out there of like, trading back to 2 and taking Drake May, or trading back to 5 and taking JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels, or even later and taking Bo Nix. And to me, that is a death warrant to a GM. If you are Ryan Poles and you are passing on Caleb Williams to take a different quarterback, and Caleb Williams is good somewhere, and your guy is even average, you're done. Your career is done. You will always be the guy who passed on Caleb Williams at that point. And again, this is if Caleb is good in the NFL. That's an important distinction here. But it's such a high risk decision to do that.
Yeah, I don't think that's the way they're going to go. I mean, we'll talk individually about all these guys, over the next hour or so. But I know a lot of people think this is call this like a very good quarterback class because there's a lot of good options up there. In my opinion, it's a 1 quarterback class. I actually don't really love a lot of these quarterbacks. I think it's Caleb Williams is in a tier of his own pretty easily, in my opinion. And again, I could be wrong. Evaluating quarterbacks is pretty much the hardest thing to do in football. Otherwise, if you could figure out how to evaluate quarterbacks with 100% certainty, you are going to make yourself a lot of money. It's just so difficult. But in my opinion, it's Caleb Williams and then 3 or 4 other guys who could be good. But they're a long way to go for them to turn into the quarterbacks they need to be in order to live up that top 5 draft pick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I generally agree. I think the gap between Caleb and quarterback 2 is wider than the gap between quarterback 2 and quarterback 3. But I do like Drake May quite a bit, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But first, we need to talk about our third question of what do we think is a strong fit with Shane Waldron schematically and just as far as what we're seeing on tape? Where are we sitting there going, that could work right there with Waldron? What do you think about that, Steve?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Shane Waldron's offense or like the Sean McVay offense or anything like that. But just from kind of what I have seen, he is coming from the Sean McVay, coaching tree. So that West Coast offense. So in my opinion, you want to get a guy who has a quick release, who can get the ball out quick, who can play in the rhythm of the offense. And then also be able, you're always going to need a quarterback who has a strong enough arm to take shots downfield and everything like that. But you really need someone who's going to play just within the rhythm of the offense, take what the defense gives you, and just stay ahead of the chains. And there's a couple of guys in this draft class who I think could do that really well. There's a couple of guys in this draft class who I think could get there. But that's kind of just the way I view it. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, so when I look at the McVay offense, and like I'll get more specifically to what Waldron was doing up in Seattle in a minute, but just it within the McVay branch of the Shanahan tree, which is like, at this point we're getting to like the third power to the nth degree of the decimal.
Right.
Like it's, but I feel like the McVay offense since Goff left and Stafford got there has been very much of a collaboration between a free-flowing playmaking aspect and a on-time rhythm passing attack. Like it's merging those two things together since Stafford got there. Now, before when it was Goff, I think I agree 100%. It was much more rhythm. It was much more hitting your reads, doing what you're supposed to, and not having that hesitation at all, and like trusting the scheme, trusting your players and teammates. But when Stafford got to LA, it hit more points of like, well, let's just let him work. Let's just let Stafford do this a little bit. And I think that's what we saw from Waldron a lot with Geno Smith in Seattle too. Was they had their times in the game where they said, "Okay, we need rhythm, we need rhythm, we need to be hitting this stuff where it is." And it felt like there were times to me that there were times where it's like, Geno, just go make a play.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not sure if that's as simple as like it was the play call, but I think points in the game. So I do think, looking at that, I do think I'm not sure whether Waldron wants that as much as a strong rhythm passer or as much as he was forced to work with that in Seattle. But I know he's capable of working with that more artistic quarterback vision as opposed to be the surgical quarterback, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, just quarterback play in the NFL in general. We talk about all these different schemes, but no matter what scheme you're in, you're always going to need to have a quarterback who can play within the rhythm of the offense and take kind of what the defense gives you. And then what separates those guys who can do that, like a Jared Goff, kind of as you mentioned with Sean McVay, and then Matt Stafford, who came in to replace him, is Matt Stafford is able to when they need it the most to go off schedule and make those plays. And it's about knowing when you need to take those chances, and doing it at an appropriate time, because you're always going to need to play kind of within the rhythm of the offense, no matter what scheme you're in. But then you need to what separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks is that ability to kind of go with outside the scheme a little bit and just kind of make a play when your team needs you. But I think, what I've learned kind of, over the years scouting quarterbacks is not to so much fall in love with those college plays where they're making incredible throws, but it's the first read throw, but it's a dime 50 yards downfield. It's like, that doesn't tell you. I mean, you want your guys to make those plays, but it doesn't tell you a whole lot about how that player's going to translate to the next level. It's about just kind of working within the rhythm of the offense. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on more. But you're right. Yeah. Stafford did come into that offense and kind of change it because they were able to do just a lot more things than they were able to do with Jared Goff.
Yeah. To your point, I don't think scouting based on the fun plays or the elite looking plays.
That's what I was saying. Yep.
I don't think you can base your scouting on that, but I think it can be a part of it. Like, if
right.
I've talked about on this show before, my scouting system is pretty simple. I have 5 options for a play: neutral, good, dominant, poor, or bad. And if, like you're saying, if it's just a first read bomb 50 yards downfield, perfect in stride, it's a good play.
Yeah.
He put the ball where it's supposed to be on time. Boom, hit him in stride. Good stuff. It's not dominant though. Dominant is saved for the second, third reads, buy some time in the pocket, and then unleash that thing. And that's what you see on some of these guys' tape. Like the dominant plays are not that common in my grading. Like it's a lot of good, a lot of poor, a whole lot of neutral, and a few dominance and a few bads. And usually when I'm looking at a top tier prospect.